and then Ava and Asha and I will kind of lay out how we're going to proceed tonight, and then we'll get going. So, Director Lurie.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Deborah Lurie. I'm the current president of the board. Thank you all for joining us. I am calling the meeting to order a few minutes late. Do we have Maggie Ty on?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. We have 4 board directors here. I'm going to let them go around and introduce themselves as soon as we take care of a little bit of business. So I'm looking for a motion to establish the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, sorry, student A.
Yeah.
So 1040, and why don't we go around and board directors introduce yourselves, and then do you guys have an intro planned with introductions, or should we do that?
We'll probably just jump right into it with intros
Okay.
here, and then at the end we'll do a full introduction of who we all were.
Okay, so board directors, just super quick, name, how many years on board, and maybe where your kids are, just so the students know.
I'm Cristina Martinez, and this is my first year in the board, so I've been here since December. And I have 2 kids, one in 10th grade at high school, and one in middle school that is in 7th grade.
Dan Glowitz, my 3rd year on the board. I have an 8th grader and a 6th grader, so both at IMS, and I live with them and my in-laws and my wife and my black lab and 2 cats in the house that I went to high school in.
I'm Jody Lee, and this is my first year on the board, and I have a 10th grader and a kid in college.
And just, again, I'm Deborah, it's my 7th year on the board, well, I'm in my 7th year on the board, and I have a senior in high school, and I will pass it on over.
Great. And I forgot Ava is not able to make it. She had already given me that heads up earlier on. So, so great to have you this evening. Asha, why don't I turn it over to you? I'm wondering one thing, should we combine these 2 tables so they have, just because we don't have as many students? So once we break, we'll go ahead and why don't we have this table come over here? That way you'll have a little bit more discussion there. You'll have 2 elementaries, then you'll have 2 high schools and 1 middle school. So then everyone will have everything perfect. So Asha, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so as all the directors know, this is our SSA group. They've been working all year on belonging. It's been the district's goal this year to move the pencil on belonging, and so each school picked a project important to them that has a center of belonging. And so what I wanted to start out with today is have them share with you guys what they worked on this year and the impact that they made on SSA. And then they also wrote up some questions for you guys. And so to kind of first introduce their projects, and then they can have a chance to ask you guys questions. And at the end, when we come back in a bigger group, we will talk about the questions that the board director sent in for the students.
In about half hour for this opening piece, is that what you were thinking? I think that's what we're thinking. So we'll come back in at 5:30, give you a 5-minute warning, and then we'll come back at 5:35 to come back as a whole group. Okay? All right.
So Nathan and Brody will heading that to.
So do we want to start with this table?
Max is not on.
Julia, do you want to start?
I'm Julia, and I'm a freshman at the high school.
She just joined.
Great.
I'm Sarah. I'm the
Andrews, what about having Dan and her join? Can we bring the computer to
So
one
do
of
we
the
want to start with the high
cases?
school, and maybe you can share what the high school's belonging project was this year?
So we focused on belonging in high school, and we chose to send out a survey specifically relating to how students felt like they belonged in the high school, and specifically relating to special accommodations like 504 plans and IUPs. How teachers have been making that easier to access, and like how students feel they're recognized with their
How many years?
And then we chose to do that because for our definition of belonging, we thought like belonging is when your needs are recognized and you feel like safe and comfortable in the environment. So we thought making sure students felt that their needs were heard and met was in person. And so we sent out the form and we're planning to try to get a few more responses over the next week. And we're planning to consolidate the data we find and present it to the teachers and submit.
That's good to hear. Like, so is it for all students or just for those that are on 504 IEP?
All students could answer the form, and there's a section specifically if you had a special accommodation. And then for all students, it was for students who are like, just like how have teachers helped you feel belong, like having office hours or
No,
like
you're talking about, sorry, I'm skipping ahead.
And you're still waiting to get.
I'm sorry, no, I
Yes, we have, I think, around 80 right now, and then we're hoping to do a final push, like sending out the survey again during Islander hours to try to get some more responses.
Middle school want to share what they've been working on? Yes, okay, Adriana.
We've been working on, I think it's gonna be a Google survey during Gator time. And
I'm gonna take you to one of
we
those.
get these answers like, I want when, I want when. And we put those answers up at the snack bar line, it's a lot of people there. And it might help students find common ground and feel like they belong at this school.
Something that you guys have been able to meet with your principals?
Yep, we met 2 times.
But you're talking about that process.
And so how are people going to get answers? Is it like, so it's like in lunch line, is it like filling out like responding to a Google search?
Maybe there'll be a temptation to candies, because middle schoolers they would do anything for candies. And we post up all the answers on the snack line.
Anything in an open prompt? Like, so like, I mean, like, I like, I mean, just for me, like, I sort of like open prompt, because you get like maybe more unexpected responses.
Are you guys assigned, like,
I'm curious to hear what those kind of says.
So the idea is that, you know, that middle schoolers, when we have like an open prompt, they'll be like, oh, I have one of sites, and they'll just completely skip
Or they'll write something like, I love Fortnite.
Do you have any examples of like what people say?
So an example could be, I did one, I don't really know what's been said, and he's,
That's okay, we just started, so we're, like, it's option, yeah, explain.
No, we just, basically just like Google and stuff and like, talk about the word cloud, but what's the goal of having the word cloud on the?
I think the goal is to like,
Basically, I
is
made sure
to
the
like,
video
students will be like, oh wait,
we
other
made
people like
a
that too,
Google
and
Forms,
they'll
and
have a
we're gonna
sense
do
of
lunchtime
belonging.
activity where people
So
say
we
pictures of
haven't
school where they feel like they.
What are your
belong.
senses of like where belonging
And
comes from?
then we have a
Is
plan
there particular
Get all of that.
classes or activities or?
Friends.
find groups where they belong. I think
The
it's,
goal
I
of
think it
this
really
is
helps
to
that.
See where kids feel like they belong. And how
it was
we
like
can
sort of
help them with that and show
Yeah,
them.
so, I feel like, so for all the elementary schools, we started a tutoring program for academics and social, like,
It's a mixture of both. I think we're gonna have to ask
so.
what are the questions?
So,
Are you
the high schoolers represent belonging.
Yeah, I'm probably more going to ask about that, but for the most part, I do summer happy to do it, or
Usually
I'm
it's
just
not,
working on a
it's,
survey
so it's
of
good to
students
very
and
caring.
students
And usually
to
if
figure out how
it's
teachers are
exactly meet
both
the
facilitating
survey
belonging,
that
but
I'm
particularly
doing.
wanting
So
input
that's
on
showing
how
that
students
all
or
the
teachers are
That sounds really cool. I know, like, when, like, my kids were in elementary, like, the mentor program, like, was, like, made a big, like, imprint, like, you know, from, like, 5th grade to kindergarten, is that?
No, we're doing very good.
That's great, I gotta tell you,
But this is like sort of an extension,
so far,
right?
you know, the
Yeah, that sounds cool.
and then
What
also,
elementary did you?
you know, as you guys get to be bigger kids.
And you had your first practice
knowing
session
that
at
younger
the
kids are ready
Yeah,
for
we
like,
had
you know,
two
being
of them,
able
they
to
went
have it, that's very fun to watch.
Was it, where was it? In the library?
I
you know, for us, especially, but I know for staff, I mean, frankly, everybody here directly from.
Talk a little bit more about how it went, and how many kids
You know, I
So
think one of the
for the
things
first time, we had 2 buses and a lot of kids showed up.
have
The
our
second
own
time, the
ideas of what you
group
need, but, you know, I think you guys are the experts on.
It was good.
You know,
A lot of
and
practice.
how you're doing, and that we need
It's
to be reminded
just that we
to
need to work on,
and to listen to your voices, so thank you for
knowing what to do.
forcing us to, in a really good way.
Like,
Forcing it like.
consider, I was just thinking
And,
that some of the
I
elementaries
find
that
it that adults are.
in
pretty
crocheting, like during lunch hour, which like the kids made like really amazing things. So like one can consider like expanding from like tutoring to just like instructing your coaching, right? Like I mean like you know like anything, like you know like whether it's making like origami or like
Oh yeah, we already did this, so our student council, during every Thursday, during our recess, we have clubs, like, we just expanded it, so now we have gaming club, we have arts and craft club, and we have, race making club.
well, yeah, like that'd be perfect. Because like I know like certain games like Pokemon and Magic like take like more like knowledge, and so it's like you know, like having a fifth grader like teach like you know younger like kids like how to play and like the rules. You do like a lot of fun like
Hopefully,
that's exciting.
help them see.
All right, so I think that was.
Let's see,
So that's like our intro. Let's go on. Do you think more questions from students to the board?
And it's
Kids
also
tell me.
alternate, so you don't have
Yes?
to worry about
So anonymous.
I guess like open like there's pick two. I guess I'll leave those to you collectively. Questions for the board or like if there's another question.
On the floor is, budgets.
I'm curious about how the decision around curriculum and how like you approve that and what like indicators you look for.
Yeah, so curriculum is one of, it's sort of curious in that it's like a fundamental responsibility of the school
It's always
board.
such a fine balance.
I would say on the very positive side for our district, we don't see a lot of like political polarization about curriculum. So it's like in other districts, there's a lot of like focus on perhaps more controversial materials. Like in my time at the board, I haven't seen that. On the other, I think there's, even though it's something that we approve, there's a lot of deference given to the administration who will be, and to teachers who will be teaching it. And sometimes what could be missing, I think from a board perspective, is just doing like a high level review, not in terms of particular textbooks, but like overall, like how do we compare to other districts, you know, in the region or in the country. But I guess the takeaway for me is like we do, there's an instructional materials committee as sort of the mechanism. There's a good deal of deference to administration and sort of the teachers that will be teaching it. And then, as I said, at least in our district, I haven't seen much in the way of controversial materials. Like,
any sort of evaluation that you report about.
How do schools recommend teachers?
So that is a great question. It is an open.
Informal.
So I think like, I mean, the last time we did pass the ball was in 2014, over 10 years ago. And the need then was overcrowding, particularly the elementary schools. So it was a pretty like definable issue. And then there was questions about sort of the scope of the solution. Like initially, like a very expansive large bond was put forth, 200 million, which would be almost 350 million in today's dollars. And then that was pared back significantly in 2014 the bond passed. Right now what we're looking at is aging facilities, which is a little bit more amorphous, I guess. And so like the initial steps is having architects, you know, talk about potential projects, and then it'll come back to the board to determine priorities and how that fits in to the overall vision of projects in the next 20 or 25 years that the school can undertake. Because ultimately, it's residents and taxpayers paying for it, like in a monthly bill. Take it, well, I mean, it's actually twice a year to be technical in property taxes. But, I mean, the way to think about it is, right, is a monthly fee that every voter pays for. And I think the interesting thing, at least the sort of political matter on bonds, is like 2012 failed pretty spectacularly. I think I feel like the exact percentages was it wasn't even close, 60%, and then it overwhelmingly passed 2 years later by like 70% of people. And so like that sort of like seesaw, like right from one to another, like tells me that you probably have like 25% of voters that are always going to vote no, 25% of voters that are always going to vote like yes, and then you got 50% of voters that you got to make an argument for that it's a good investment of money.
I hear them moving around in the middle schools and everything.
But yeah, like right now it's contacting experts, sort of coming up with more concrete plans for potential projects, and then sort of figuring out what we can afford.
Okay.
Other questions?
That's a good question. I have
So
a
question
question for the process.
Yes.
How does the MISD budget work?
But we.
It's a great question. So in a big picture level, I think what's important to recognize is every state it varies a lot, like how funding works for education. Because of language in our state constitution that says it's the paramount duty of the state to provide a public education, a lot of money in our state comes from the state, and when it comes to the local level, we're actually like very constrained in what we can apply. So there's a uniformity of revenue across the state that's fairly unique in Washington State. And there's arguments that that's like more equal, there's arguments that maybe doesn't reflect cost of living differences between less expensive areas of the state and wealthy areas of the state. But as a result, there's not a lot that the board can do to influence it. We do have the ability, when it comes to local levies, to pass what's called the EP&O levy or the maintenance levy. We have a a maximum amount that we can request for that that's set by the state budget after query, and we sort of, most districts will naturally max that out, which means there's not a lot of control that we have on the revenue side.
But I have to say
It's predicated on the number of students, and then costs largely scale with students. Because we then have teachers and teaching students. So what we do is sort of looking at the budget, as we look at enrollment numbers, we look at what the amount we can expect to receive from the state is, how many teachers we need to teach the students that we expect, and then 85% of that goes out to teacher salaries. And the other 15% is overhead, and that's pretty uniform sort of across schools, and that's that's sort of like the allocation that works. So like that's sort of budgeting 101. The biggest issue, like sort of at a broad level, because so much money comes from the state, is making sure, particularly going forward, that we get a reasonable amount from the state to pay our teachers. Because we've lost the ability to ask for local taxpayers to pay for it in the way that we can when it comes to school construction. And then just making an argument that it's reasonable, right? But we actually cannot do that when it comes to revenue on an operation.
But then the board also can then support those supports happening.
Other questions?
Those are, it's really, really helpful and important. We are the ones saying we want to celebrate. Yeah, right? And then we can tell the superintendent, we want to celebrate. And then he's like, okay, I'm gonna take this path.
Yeah, so that's a great question, like interesting to know. So out of curiosity, do you know, like in terms of the specifics for already, and then like just sort of questions for generally about like providing feedback. Is there like a feedback in the middle school where like, I mean, sort of like, you know, for businesses, like I think of like if you have like a complaint or an issue with like, you know, a particular item, you can just fill out a form. Not really. So I mean, one thing to consider maybe, I don't know, would be like at the leadership, you know, like meeting at the middle school to suggest some sort of like form in the same way that businesses have, or like help desk, like we sort of say like, hey, like this is a drop down issue, like with respect, you know, to curriculum already, and then write in. So there's that feedback. That would be my suggestion. And the other is, there's always the ability to write to the board, to speak to the board, but maybe to try to sort of provide a mechanism at the middle school to sort of surface those concerns, so it's like visible. And then what are the, like, is it just, what are some of the concerns that you've heard with already, or is it?
Christina said, we all have different schools and in different schools, so kind of
This
what's going on.
breaks it down so
Under, you know, and maybe not even friends, but like, you know, other activities.
Okay, it's kind of what's the definition of like
Widespread
understanding,
understanding.
it's not in-depth learning connecting to what we're talking about.
And I mean, I think.
Are you talking about, just quickly, the assessment or from the curriculum? Because in the middle school, you're taking the assessment. So is that what you mean, that sense of disconnect
No, I
between the
think, so
assessment?
like the assessment, I think they've like the same sort of questions on
And also
like the actual like learning. I think it'd be more interesting what's the difference between the like the iReady assessment that takes the data.
So we're involved in that,
It's
and we're
very
doing,
different.
we're doing
So it's like
facilitating now. You know, I would say.
So this is, I mean, it's really interesting, you know, great feedback. And I think,
You
you know, one is iReady, and some of like, you know, the features which I think, you know, we built the benefit as well as the detriment, are new and novel, but like as a positive, there's the ability to work with the manufacturer, you know, like a provider, to shape it perhaps to better like provide a more engaging
But then also
education, and then ultimately like we can work and we can go in a different direction. But yeah, like I think it'd be vital to have students provide feedback, knowing that it's very much something that can be shaped, and that it's not just sort of a permanent feature. And so definitely provide that feedback. And then as I said, like perhaps it's a systemic.
We're gonna give you a 5-minute
like
warning,
ways to like
5 minutes
Google
left.
Form or others, or just what's a suggestion way, right? And maybe just like an old school like Dropbox, with like, you know, paper and pencil, but.
Agree to pay that, it's hard, but really I would say the number.
Any more questions, or I don't know if we should ask for a bunch of questions and move on. So I do have a question about like sort of phone policy, like for me from like the board and.
We're gonna do that one as a whole group.
Okay.
But ask a different one, or you can go off script and ask other questions.
Building.
That's an exciting one for all of them.
And one is called bonds. Levies is for.
What if anything do you think is like
taxpayers.
something that is a board member or just an adult, someone likely to know in your schools that's like important you think to like the educational experience?
And then kind of smaller projects. And then bonds, big projects, like a new building, or a part of a building, or, you know, really big things. So, and that's also taxpayer money. It's just usually a lot more than a levy is, you know, per
Giving you
tax.
the information.
And
And it's
people
not
assess
like,
tax.
oh, you have to do this
How
to
much
get
their
the
house is up.
information, just, it's just giving you. So rather than the students of the school find that plain and.
I think for high school, we talked about this at the meeting yesterday for the school. I think this kind of goes in hand in hand with like renovation plan. It's for the high school, everything's very, especially in the commons and in the lunchroom, everything's very big group focused, so all the tables are really big and seat like 10 people. And I think for us, we feel that it would be better, especially for a sense of belonging, to have like options for like smaller groups, like maybe like a 1 or 2 person table whole, because if you're by yourself and you sit at a big table, it's just like sort of how like social judgment is. It's like you feel very awkward, like put on the spot. So kids end up just like eating in the hallways or just walking around instead of being able to like sit and feel like relaxed at lunch. So just having more options for like single people, like smaller groups, because not everyone has a big group of friends that they sit with.
And also you can't really eat anywhere else.
It seems like, I mean, we'll see like with the architects homes like that. I mean, some of like furniture, hopefully, should be very expensive, like, you know, solutions to that. Like, I'm just thinking of like in a hotel or restaurant or like whatever, it's pretty easy to have like, you know, different table sizes, right? So that's good feedback.
I mean, I know at the middle school, like, there's different table sizes, and like, I mean, I have a few close friends that are in my lunch that I sit every single day, and it would not make sense to split the same size with
So have they, have
pretty
Asha ever
big.
talked to you guys about
Other
that?
academic
We're
knowledge.
finishing another school and doing projects with
Then we have an instructional materials committee, which is.
Yes, okay, how's that?
One around the corner.
Yeah, I would give places to like.
Those are probably the formal ones.
We know how to, I mean,
Tucker
adults too.
Tucker just talked about, and then we have
feel good.
instructional materials committee. But then
More of
there's
a fishbowl.
all kinds of
Yeah.
other committees.
You guys talked about
that
the
feed
hallway.
into
Is there enough
the
microwaves in the middle school?
So,
or, like,
it's probably, you know,
I
there
think
are probably
there was
over
one
30 in the district that are
So,
going on, and then
there's
we have
been-
technology advisory group
Usually
is another one, so,
Because,
how you feel about it.
someone spilled something all over and
And would that
most of them do.
next day,
all bathrooms or
They have to.
so that's what they're looking
They're
at?
just looking at.
things can just crowd to one that don't have any signs of
Right,
spill.
no, it's great
Is there- is
feedback,
there a
just,
line?
you know, I mean, on that,
Yes.
it's,
I
you
mean,
know,
I
it's
don't
just
know.
knowing.
2 more minutes, so think about winding down.
Privacy and
Well,
access and all the different things that
like,
go into
coming from
It's not like
a
you
board
would
member
take that.
perspective, like every single day, there is a line for microwaves, even every day use microwaves sometimes, but I don't not use
We talked about like most of them.
Do you also think there's the possibility of
fundamentals,
providing more
we
microwaves
have,
or like, because I've heard this from like just from like my daughter and like her friends
There's,
and like.
I think there's like 6 microwaves.
you know, puts
A lot.
the budget together. So it really comes, you know, at a high level, what the board
It's not
does is
enough for
really
like
focus
Yeah,
on
but
yeah.
like it's
fundamentals.
Okay, so we're really getting increased. Is there other things for lunch, like, so like
That's-
table
And then the
configurations,
superintendent.
like ability to reheat
specifically
food,
says, well, here's how we're
like
gonna
what
do
other
that.
things, like,
And
other things for lunch?
It's a priority. I don't know, if we say it's a priority, that our students.
Fred, you don't have that problem as much as I do.
That would say that.
You've been eating lunch.
They like really tried
So.
Yeah, once they even stop randomly while they were
As an aside, I've learned for like skilled trades, being an elevator repair person is a very good skilled trade. Because like, it takes like, you know, like a bit of expertise, like I guess is like our elevator example shows. And so like the rates are actually quite good.
You know, how.
So if anyone is looking for like a skilled trade, elevator repair person, I think it's a way to go.
Obviously the middle school is short, so.
Yeah, and there's a lot of elevators, too, when you look at like commercial buildings, right? Like, you know, like, they're not like.
I think some kids like.
All right, finish up the thought that you're on. Awesome. So our last half hour then is gonna be more of a whole group conversation, and these are gonna be the board's questions to you as students. And so what we're gonna do is I'll turn it over here to Asha in a second to facilitate, but I'm gonna give all of our students two playing cards, okay? And what this is gonna do is help us to promote making sure everyone can be part of it. So you're gonna get 2. After you've responded to something, if you've added something, just flip one of them over onto the MI side, okay? And the idea is you get to spend 2 during the conversation, and until everyone's spent 2, we want to make sure we get everyone's voices in there. Does that make sense? That will help us. Now, students, if you would, before you speak the first time, introduce yourselves so the rest of the board members can know who you are, your name, your grade level, elementary students, what school you're at, something like that, okay?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, the card is for each question, you participate twice, or?
For the whole half hour.
Whole five, oh, okay.
Yep.
You can choose if you want to participate more than once.
Yep.
Do board
And
members
hope-
get cards too, or?
What's that?
Do board members get cards too, or?
No, we are
No,
asking questions.
you get to ask a question. So, I'll turn it over to Asha and I'll hand out cards.
Okay, so, we had an SSA meeting yesterday, so all the students got a chance to look at these questions that the board sent in by email. We'll start with the 4 questions that are on the sheet and we'll go in order. If the board has any more questions after we finish those 4, we're happy to have those answered also, but I just wanted to start with the ones that were sent in by the board members. So, the first question was from Director Lee about phone policy. Just as kind of a guiding point, we wanted to understand, is there a clear understanding about rules regarding personal devices at your school? And should there be a policy regarding personal devices, and if so, what do you think it should be? Of course, this looks different at every age group, but if anyone wants to kick that conversation off. Looking over this guy.
So for
Introduce yourself, Kim.
I'm Hannah. I'm in 7th grade in middle school, and as Asha said that it looks different for every age level. And for middle school, I feel like the phone policy does need a little bit of polishing and more stricter rules enforced for the teachers to realize what the phone policies are. Because a lot of teachers make up their own rules and it ends up a whole mess because you might forget that this teacher doesn't allow phones and then you take out your phone and have your phone taken for the entire day. So I feel like we need to put a little bit more thought into how we talk about phones in school, especially for the teachers, not only for students.
So that there's consistency with the teachers?
Yeah.
I'm Sienna. I'm in 6th grade at IMS. I think regarding phone policy, I think like every teacher has a different role. Like, I don't think there should be like no phones in school because I think it looks different for each student. Because in one of my classes where phones are allowed, there's tons of games being played. But in like other classes where music is just allowed, it flows a lot better because students know that if you take your phone out, you might get it taken away for the end of the period or until like, the next day. And I think there just needs to be like a rule that every teacher follows and it's not like up for debate.
Alright, so I do agree that we should make a stricter policy, but I also should suggest that we should, how do I say it? Sorry. We should make a system similar to the strike system where if a student uses their phone too much, they'll get it taken away, or they might be, their parents could get messaged, and yeah.
Will you introduce yourself really quickly?
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm Adrian, 6th grader. Sorry about that.
Does any other grade level want to talk? Brody?
Awesome. So I'm Brody, a 9th grader at MIHS, and I think it's kind of hard to create a one-size-fits-all sort of rule for this because I know that even just in my 6 classes through the day, I have teachers who assign very different amounts of work. They have different amounts of activity planned for the class period. So I have teachers who will spend the whole 50 minutes or 90 minutes on block lecturing us, and that's the expectation is that we spend the whole time taking notes, listening. But then I have other teachers who maybe give a quick 10-minute lesson and the entire rest of the time is spent doing like work on it, practice. And maybe if some students finish early, sometimes there just isn't other work to do, and so it's hard to find, especially like recently I found that I haven't had enough work to do where it's filled entire class periods where I get whole 50-minute periods just to work. And so then I'm like, well, what do I do if my teacher sees me take my phone out and can't do anything on it? Or, because the other thing I'm gonna do is just spend time on my school laptop doing nothing, and they're kind of the same to me. And so I'd rather be able to maybe even just at least take my phone out and listen to music. But yeah, sometimes I get my work done and there's not much that I can do because I've gotten it done for other classes too. So just as creating one rule just doesn't seem like it would work perfectly.
So I'm a sophomore in my church. I'd like to add to that, I think there is a pretty clear policy of generally no phones in classes when we're doing schoolwork. And I think that I think phones generally can be used as a distraction for students. However, I think they're also a useful tool sometimes. I think especially with assignments, like in which you have to like scan a page or something and submit it. It's so much easier to do with your phone, and sometimes just your phone can just be easier than using your laptop. So I think they're also a pretty useful tool in the classroom.
Do any elementary schoolers want to talk about what phones?
Yeah, so I'm Serb, I'm a 5th grader at Northwood, and for the phone policy, it's clear that you're not allowed to bring phones in class, and if you do, it has to be in your backpack. And people bring phones because they want to play games most of the time. It's not even that they have to walk home alone or something they have to do at home, and they need a phone for that. But most people take phones to school just to play games in their free time, like during the bus ride home or random reasons. It's like class is disrupted by phone calls coming from unknown callers, and it's disruptive, so I don't think there's a strict policy to that.
Great. I think we want to move on to our next question. Okay. So the next question was sent in by Director Tucker. It said, imagine that you have a very small magic wand. You can't use it to end world hunger or bring peace to the Middle East, but you can make one change to Dartmoor's Island School District. What would that change be? Yeah.
I would start by like changing the school district so then people can easily send feedback on like their teachers or something they see that they don't like.
Yeah, Julia?
I just thought of this idea, maybe, because I know for me, the transition from 5th grade to 6th grade was definitely something I was very nervous about going into it, just because I'm the oldest sibling, so I knew nothing about what it was going to be like, the same for going from middle school to high school. So maybe some way for like interaction between the different schools where older kids can help answer questions of younger kids, so then you can feel more comfortable going into the new environment, and also so you have interacted with someone that's going to be at your new school, so then you can see a friendly face or just know there's someone there that knows who you are and is going to look out for you.
I think making sure every student in the district has an adult that they feel supported by, who is like a staff member, because I think throughout my years I've always had an adult that I can turn to if I need help on something, whether that be academically or socially. And even if I don't always need it, it's always nice to know that someone is gonna have your back if you ever need it.
Thank you. I'll probably change I don't know if who said this, but like maybe have easier access to teachers
or like to give them more feedback. Because there are a lot of people who have been like asking for stuff, but they don't like sometimes really get it.
Nathan, will you introduce yourself really quickly, and Alex too?
Do I?
Nathan, you go first and then Alex.
My name is Nathan and I'm in 5th grade and I go to Northwood. My name is Alex and I'm in 6th grade. Or in 8th grade. Sorry.
Molly?
I say I agree with Nathan because it's really hard to get a hold of a lot of your teachers if you're not in their class. And I feel like sometimes I need to talk to a different one, or if it's student council or just for another reason, like it's really hard to get a hold of them. And I think just easier access to that would make it a lot easier for me to just be able to get a clear understanding.
Molly, what school do you go to?
Oh, I'm Molly and I go to Westminster in 5th grade.
So I know that the 5th graders, you don't really know probably a lot about this, but I think, especially at the middle school, I know this would be more work for the counselors when deciding lunches. I think that you should be able to request at least like one person so that like you at least have someone, because like there's been times this year where I'm like, well, who do I sit with? Because like friends like change and like you might have this group and then it might feel like you don't, and then like just one close friend that like you really know that you're not gonna lose, and that would also like make the transition easier from 5th grade to like 6th grade. And I don't know.
So, for the lunches especially, I honestly think the change should be, there should be, more, allergy-free options, because people with allergies often don't have lunches at all, because they can't get school lunch and home lunch isn't always the first choice they have.
Okay, so it looks like we're ready to move on to the next question. So, this one is also from Director Tucker. The district had a theme of belonging over the last year. She's interested in hearing what your experience has been like with both belonging and not belonging. Has there been a time where you felt lack of belonging, a lack of connection in our schools? If so, what do you think could be done to address this situation for other kids in the future?
So I remember, I moved here in the middle of 2nd grade, and that was really rough for me because I didn't know anyone. And it was really stressful because I also didn't know what we were learning, and I don't know if I learned it already or I was really far behind because my school was like not the best in education. But I think another way we can do it is like maybe we can like pair up with like a buddy, because that's kind of what like I did, and I like met a friend really fast and we became really good friends. And so maybe like have like a buddy in your class that like can show you around and that develops friendship over time. My name is Sophie and I'm in 5th grade and I go to Alabama.
I'm Clemson, I go to Linkage, I'm a 5th grader, and like Sophie said, if like going into kindergarten, if you can get like a 5th grader to pair up with like kindergarten, or if somebody has like 2 or 3 years of experience to help them get into the new school, that'd be good.
Yeah, Molly?
I definitely feel there's been a bit of lack of spirit at some of our belonging assemblies. I think sometimes they just drone on a little bit and don't always tie into belonging, but they've been getting a lot better, and at our school, it feels at recess there's a lot more inclusiveness, but you always can find just like this one little group somewhere that's just lacking a bit of inclusive, and they're just not letting everyone join in, and it's just a bad energy vibe, and I wish there'd be some way just to and a little more inclusive everywhere.
Nathan, what are your galleries?
Like Kingston and so you said, maybe like when I was coming to 4th grade, that was my first year. I didn't know anyone, but I got a buddy to like pair me up, and we became pretty good friends. So maybe like you could do that like for others who don't really know anyone, just like you.
Jordan?
I'd say, my name is Jordan, I'm a junior at the high school, and I'd say something that really has helped me feel like I belong, especially when I was transitioning from 8th to 9th grade, and then, so on and so forth, is I think the staff at the high school in particular have done like a great job at building relationships with their students. And so that's just something that I think has really helped me through all my years at the high school, because I always knew that my teachers, apart from just like being there to support me academically, have also been really good at just building bonds with their students, knowing like, I have some teachers who I had a long time ago who will still remember my name and the things that I like and stuff like that. And so I think that's been something that's been really big for the belonging that I know a lot of my friends feel in high school in particular, is just that I think truly like commending the staff for doing such a great job being available for students, both academically and socially. That's been a huge factor.
Hi, my name's Toby. I'm in 5th grade at Allen Park. I haven't really had a moment where I felt like I didn't belong, but for kids that have had moments like that, I feel I kind of wish that there was a way for them to be like a belonging group, kind of, where they all meet and just discuss stuff.
What school did you say first?
Allen Park.
For someone at Lakeridge, do people use the buddy bunch at Lakeridge?
Not really. We don't really use it. Yeah, I think we want to Allen Park.
Audrey?
Okay, so when I came here in 2nd grade, I really felt nervous, but my teacher and students were very welcoming, and we did this All About Me project, and it really helped me find some friends in the new place, which I really liked. Yeah.
Great.
Really quickly, I just wanted to say that the transition, again, tying into how many people were talking about how they transition from different school to the school that they're currently in. I wanted to say that transitioning from the school that I was to here was a really choppy, I'd say. It was very difficult to find people that I felt like I belonged with, because everybody was so integrated into the Mercer Island system, and it was very difficult to find people that were really open to finding new people to include in their group. Because I have this feeling that the Mercer Island system is sort of just so tightly bound together that it's difficult to open new pathways and find different people to be with, because everybody's been with each other since, I don't know, like 2nd, 1st grade, right? It's very difficult to be able to find somebody who you really feel like you belong with, because nobody's really open to finding new people to hang out with.
We need more Nirvana fans, right? Hannah's our resident 90s grunge fan.
So we're going to go on to our last question that was sent in. This was Director Lurie. What are examples of meaningful moments you've had at school that have changed your perspective?
And I think everyone's at least shared once, so you can open this up. If you've shared twice, you can join back in.
Brody?
So I remember I was starting out at the high school, and I was like ready for a new start, because I was 3 years at the same school, and I knew I would be with the same people, but I felt like I kind of had the opportunity, because I heard from my siblings that at the high school there's far more opportunity for finding new people, especially who aren't in the same grade as you. And so I got to the first day, everyone was having like club fairs, things were showing up on Schoology, and I just basically signed myself up for as many things as I could find. And it was really meaningful as kind of the fall progressed, because I felt like more and more I started seeing familiar faces in the hallways, and I started knowing people's names and knowing faces, whereas in past years that hadn't happened to me, especially as quickly. And it was just really cool to have the opportunity to be able to do that and to be able to meet so many new people so quickly, especially people who maybe typically I wouldn't have been friends with outside of a certain activity.
Oh, sorry, we'll start with, yeah.
So in 4th grade, I found out there was something called Linking at my school, and I wanted to attend because, you know, I really like nature, and I just think it like would be like horrible if all of the life went to waste. And when I went to the first meeting, it was really nice because it showed me like things that are actually happening, like out of reach that some people can't see, and people who can see it, we want to try to spread the word, like, so other people can maybe see farther into it. And we had this project where we're trying to get 10 people to sign up for Goodwill, and if we do, Goodwill will come to Island Park daily next year, and I think that will really improve like all the waste, especially actually from a lot of the classrooms, and like a lot of people who like to eat snacks that come in like chips and things that they don't bring from home. And when they throw it away, like I just see the trash bin in my classroom pile up every day, and I don't really like seeing it like pile up a lot. And so if we get Goodwill, we might be able to like minimize that like waste in the trash bin. I think it was in 3rd and 4th grade, when I got into class, in the first day of school, I was with none of my friends in my class, but I made new friends in my class, and I realized that I was hanging out with the wrong crowd of people, and I feel like it's hard for people who are in those crowds that aren't exactly the best crowds to be in. It's hard for them to get out because they feel like they'll be alone, and that they don't want to be with.
Julia?
I remember in 3rd grade, one of my classmates passed away from leukemia during the year, and I remember it was definitely very hard for our class, but our whole grade at our school like kind of united and gave us a lot of support, and it was just really cool to see us all unite behind something.
Molly, next.
Two things, one being on the store was really special, and it's really cool to be here. And second, this year I was paired with my kindergarten buddy, and she's very cute. She likes to talk a lot, so I get to hear a lot from her, and it's really cool to hear her understanding of kindergarten, what it means to her. And she's like my little friend. It's very fun.
One thing that was like always stuck with me, my first grade teacher, she was actually like amazing. Like I would say she's probably one of my favorite teachers. Like when I was in elementary school, she was the teacher that I'd always turn to, like if I had like a friend problem, or I just needed someone to talk to, because she was just always there. And one of the things that I loved that she did is she had like, if you were like past her class, like let's say in 2nd grade, I could come and I could just have lunch with her and we could just like talk. And it was just like, it was really sad, like, cause like, I don't know, at the end of the year, I was like, I don't know, cause she had such importance in my 5 years at West Mercer, and it was really important to me.
Alex?
I directed The Little Mermaid musical this year, and I had almost all of my teachers attended. which was really meaningful because most of them don't live on the island, and it was after school hours. And I had, for days on end, I had a lot of teachers that were just telling me that it went really well, or everything that they saw, and congratulating me and all of the cast and crew members. And I think that's really just showed me how much people care for everyone at the schools, and like including administrators who I've almost never talked to, and teachers at the high school that I've seen. And I think it showed me how much communities matter, and that on Mercer Island specifically, there's always going to be somebody that looks after you.
I think building on Alex's idea of communities, something that's been really special to me for my 3 years here, as Asha knows, is our journalism program, which we're both a part of. And I think that's just something that, you know, I signed up for it in freshman year knowing that it would like fulfill my credit and that I enjoyed writing, but I think it ended up being a really special community to me. And now there's like 20 people and they all feel like family to me. And I also think it's super cool since we get to cover a bunch of community events. And I especially like writing stuff about, you know, what's been happening within our school district, because even talking to all the fifth graders on this board, it's just so different compared to how I, you know, experienced my fifth grade at Linkage, or even all the way through kindergarten, like hearing their kindergarten experiences versus my kindergarten experiences. I mean, Mr. and you were my principal then, so like, it was just so different, and getting to do things like volunteering at the elementary schools. I work with some clubs at my school that focus on like disability awareness, unified sports, best buddies, stuff like that. So getting to give presentations to kids in elementary schools just feels really full circle, and I like seeing how much like more accepting and how much more growth we've made in the years since I graduated.
Last comment?
Something meaningful that has happened through Ironman Middle School is really finding a class that you feel like a family and like a big like friend group. And I feel like when you find that sort of class, it feels like they're always going to be there for you. You'll always be able to wave to them at the hallway, like say hi, talk a little bit. And that's something that I really value, and I really enjoy when there's that sort of connection, even if it's just like base layer. It's not even that, it's a best friendship, it's just your friends, and I think that's really meaningful to me.
So now's an opportunity if the board has any more questions for students, for any quick questions. Great, I think it's about 6 o'clock, so.
Yeah, which of our students, if you'll raise your hand really quickly, is this, you'll be cycling off? You've been on the SSA for 2 years. So we have a few people who are cycling off, and then we'll have some staying on. This, you know, one of the things that's, you know, exciting for me is when we started last year with the SSA, the feedback that we had from others was that it was just kind of a place to come and talk and share ideas, but students wanted to do something. And to watch your projects this year start from where they were to where they are now, and you're meeting with students in your schools, you're meeting with your principals, a survey's gone out, that service I think is really important. But I definitely want to thank Ava and Asha. They are our co-facilitators. We meet, develop an agenda, they help run the meetings, and then also a special thank you to Jordan. She kind of stepped out of her role in the high school, and she's been the elementary facilitator this year. And so she's gonna stick around for one more year on the SSA, her senior year, probably because we'll have you continue working with others there. But I wanna thank all of our students. We have one more meeting to go, so we get to come together again in June, but I will give Asha the final words, but the SSA is an incredible time for me to be with students, but also to hear some really great things about our schools and where we need to continue to get better. So Asha, you get the final word.
Gosh, I want to thank all the board members for coming today and meeting with the students. The students have worked really hard all year long, and they've been really committed to the goal
of belonging. It's been really fun to see throughout the year, like, them start to like get more into their projects and get excited and do the work. In the high school, it's been fun to even attend some of the meetings that they've been at, to try to get their projects off the ground. And I love hearing your guys' perspectives every month. It's like one of my favorite meetings each month. No offense to regular school board meetings, but they're not quite as fun. And yeah.
Why do you think we fought so hard to get to come?
Yeah.
So, any closing words from board members?
I just want to thank you all for participating and for sharing your participation with us, and really thank Asha and Ava. They've worked really hard this year, making sure that student voice is always top of mind when we make all of our decisions. I told our table group that you know, we do this to provide, you know, better opportunities for students, and so your voices are the most important, and we want to hear in any way. So, you know, as you guys continue to work, whether it's the rest of this year or next year, just you know that we want to hear. So, you know, find ways and encourage your friends to find ways to get that information to us. But, you know, as Asha leaves us and heads on to the next thing, just want to thank you for coordinating all this. You had a great mentor in Andrew, and you've been like just as great a mentor to Ava, and it's been fun watching you then mentor all the younger students. So thanks for your participation in putting all this together.
Thanks, guys. Well, have a great rest of the night.
And we'll recess is 7:15 when they start. We're gonna rearrange the room, or 6:15 rather,
Yeah.
6:15. We'll rearrange the room, but students, thanks for being here. How many of you have rides coming in upstairs? Or is everyone coming in, getting rides from downstairs? Okay, perfect. So students, I'll let you kind of dismiss out here. We'll get you connected and then we'll rearrange the room.
Sorry about that, Sarah. We were muted as we were getting everyone set up. And we're just confirming that we've promoted everyone.
Thank you.
Should get started here shortly.
Yeah, this was her email. Who was coming up? Carol, Doug, you, Kate, Kirsten, Rob, Sarah,
Vivian, Vivian is going to be coming up right
Oh yeah,
now.
Vivian is also joining us.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm promoting Vivian.
so it's just Kirsten.
Yes, and she was coming.
All right, I think we probably have critical mass.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. We don't have to do anything procedural, because we already did. We'll do it at the end. For those, I know everybody here, but I'm Deborah Lurie, current board president, and welcome to our PTA Council linkage session. Board linkage session. It's something that we really look forward to in terms of interacting with our most important stakeholders throughout the district, and really having the opportunity to have more of a discussion than we do, certainly during board meetings, but have a discussion and talk about items of interest. So let's, why don't we start off by doing a quick intro of everybody. We can just go around the room and then we can kind of hit online as people can participate.
All right, so I'm Jody Lee, it's my first year on the board. Cristina Martinez, first year on the board.
I'm Debbie Burke, and I'm the PTA Council President this year.
Julian Bradley, Vice President and President-elect for next year of the PTA Council.
Dan Glowitz, third year on the board.
Robin Lee, I'm co-VP of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion on the council.
I'm Carol Quill, I'm the VP of Communications.
Andrew Johnson, I'm the Technology Director for the district.
I'm Michelle Mueller. I'm the executive assistant.
Kate?
Hi, Kate Gillum, president, one of the presidents of Northwood PTA.
Siri?
Hi, I'm Serene Uthak Short. I'm one of the co-presidents of the PTSA at the high school.
Vivian?
Hi, I'm Vivian. I'm the co-VP for DEI at the council.
And Sarah?
Hi, everyone. I am the Linkage PTA president calling live in from the Linkage Science Fair.
And Fred Rundle, superintendent. I think that's our group, or do we have?
So far.
Okay.
So far, I'm going to continue watching it.
Perfect.
All right, so welcome all. I do want to defer to PTA to start us off with questions, discussion, whatever you guys want to do.
Sure. I'll start with the first question, and it's a pretty generic question. I know it gets into some operational aspects as well, but from a school board policy perspective, kind of one of the underlying kind of concerns of parents, and it's never a new concern, is are my kids being prepared well for the world that they're going into? Is school rigor enough? Just so from a school board policy perspective, you know, can you speak to how you're preparing the kids to enter the world and be good citizens of the world and do well in the world?
Thanks for throwing a softball for the first one.
Yeah.
I think, you know, from a policy perspective, the board's role is really, you know, the high level in terms of value, vision, mission, fundamentals. And, you know, fundamental number 2 is the academic rigor. Fundamental 1 is personalized learning. And you know, we really do see them all as equally important. You know, I think, you know, it's really interesting to come. Now, this is from my point of view. So we really focus on that. We, you know, then pass our operations on to our superintendent to make sure that those fundamentals are being played out. I think, you know, it's hard when you're in it to really kind of know where your kid is and where they're going. And, you know, it's part of a long journey, just like when we're in the middle, I don't know. You know, the same kind of thing for adults in our own explorations. As a mom of a senior now and being involved with the district for the amount of time, including as a student, I think frankly we're doing a phenomenal job in terms of really making sure that the focus is for students to find their voice and to find their pathway. And whether that's a very academically rigorous program or really diving across the board or diving deep in specific topics and interests. I think, you know, getting to watch, you know, the high schoolers and, you know, Jody has this perspective too as a parent, and Debbie does too, our kids are succeeding. They're finding their path, they're finding their passion, they're choosing whether it's, you know, to go on with education or to make a different choice. When we see the list of colleges and universities, I don't want to say it's the same amazing, you know, group of academic institutions that our students are going to. You see I'm always curious to see, you know, when they put down their senior in high school what they're going to major in, and then actually going back when they graduate from college. I imagine that changes a lot, which I think is really good. I understand the concerns, you know, as your child is going through, as your student is going through, and like, where are they? Where's, you know, that, you know, and everyone kind of hits their stride at different places, and just like with physical growth spurts, it's, you know, a little bit at a time, and then a big one, and then maybe stagnant for a while. But I think really, as we focus on the whole child, as we've had the focus on the whole child, and really personalized learning, that I think it's the way that we're assisting our kids in learning. We can always improve. We strive every day to improve, to choose new curriculums that could better meet the needs of our students. With, you know, we've imposed a challenging couple years for our elementary educators with 2 curriculum adoptions in 2 years, which we don't like to do, but they got pushed back because of COVID, and we didn't want to wait any longer. So, you know, we hear the concerns about, you know, education, and we go in and, you know, find the best options that we have, and I think you know, Fred and his team are very open to, you know, making sure that we're making the right choices. I think that's our role as board directors, is to constantly push to evaluate and assess if we're making the best choices, or if what we're doing is the best option in the moment for our students, because those things, they change a lot and they're somewhat fluid. But you know, I know that's an ongoing concern, and it's going to always be, because it's our most important, they're our most important assets, and we want to do best by them as possible. But I think that, yeah, I mean, you know, the things that I'm seeing, when we hear from our high school students about where they are and the opportunities that they have, you know, they wanted open enrollment because they wanted the curricular opportunities that they currently have, and they wanted them to stick around, and the club opportunities, and, you know, they work every day to make the world a better place. I know that sounds a little bit cliche, but this group of kids, they're doing really good things. So I'll let other people.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess from my perspective, and I don't have high schoolers, but from what I've read, and it's really from my role as a school board director, is, I mean, it's peak college admissions insanity. There was just an article in the New York Times about this, and I think with that headline, and I think it reflects that the ground has shifted a lot, at least certainly the perception, I think the actuality, in terms of what colleges are looking for. And some of that was introduction with the pandemic, where standardized tests were no longer being, you know, requested, and students weren't able to take it, and so they fell off, and now, like, they're reappearing. There's questions about Supreme Court decisions and what can be considered on an application. There's the ease in with which, you know, students can apply to multiple schools, and so what that does, and sort of the gamesmanship of what schools admit which students, and sort of their own ratings. things and sort of like has introduced a lot of anxiety. I think as a result, one of the things the board could consider is doing sort of a more 360 curriculum review at a high level. We did something like this over 2 decades ago. It was called the benchmark study. It was an in-depth report that sort of looked, and the recommendation at the time was very concrete. It was that our high school at the time, over 20 years ago, wasn't offering enough AP courses. I think like the AP course offering was like 5 at the time. And the recommendation was that was putting our students at a competitive disadvantage to other students. I think now, just given how much the terrain has changed in the last few years, it's something for the board to consider. And how we compare to other districts, not just in the region, but nationally, because when it comes to where kids are applying, I think 2/3 that go on to college are out of state. They're competing for those seats with students that have different backgrounds and different opportunities.
And just to build on what Dan was saying, I think one of the things about, when we think academic rigor, I think that we actually, we look at like the crazy admission seasons that just happened, is sort of to consider like how well-rounded a student is and how much passion they show for their particular interests. And I think colleges are not just looking at like, oh, are you taking like 9 AP classes? Are you, is your GPA absolutely perfect, whatever they want to see a student that's, directed. And I think one of the weird places where our district really shines is like students can find their passion and really focus on it. We're seeing like, we like one of the best like music programs in the nation, like our band and orchestra program or our fine arts programs. Like, college looking at a student who has focused on music knows that they've really focused on and had some of the best opportunities to perform at a high level. Or like our radio and TV programs, as a college looking at the student who's been really focused on that can see like, oh, this person has drilled down into their passion for this. So I think it's important, academic rigor is of course important, and you want the best opportunities for the whole range of students, but it's also important for us to think in this like hyper-competitive college thing. It's important for our district, and I think we do a wonderful job with this, to provide opportunities for students to really show that well-rounded nature. Participate in sports, and we have those offered. We participate in the arts, and we have that offered. The CCR classes for students who maybe aren't going to college to really find their passion and figure out where they want to go and what they want to do with themselves afterwards. And I think that's also something that this school is doing a great job and can really focus on doing better, so that we have that extra hook that colleges are looking for today. It's not just academics that are going to get a kid into college, no matter how perfect that student might be.
And I will say, I'm just adding, because I will not repeat, that within this is that the rigor is across the board. And I know that, for example, the summer school is one example that people might complain that PE has shift and health. However, if we are holding ourselves to have a rigor at different level across the curriculum, and that means also the classes that we offer during the summer, and that is an example of making the district holding up to what we want.
And I would just end by saying we hear a lot from especially students about how parent pressure to do more and more and more academically is really harming them. And like everyone has said, what we're seeing with colleges at least is they want to see, who are you? And the classes you take don't define who you are. Certainly it's part of it, and finding that interest and diving deep into the areas but the kids that were the most successful this year, college-wise, are the ones who were able to explore deeply, and whether it was, this is what I want to do forever, or this is just an area that I dove deep and learned a lot about, and learned a lot about myself. But it's really finding themselves, and so having that communication, that it isn't the answer is not how many AP classes can you take, and frankly do well in. Doing well is great, but that's not going to get kids where they want to go to anymore. At least that's what I've been seeing, especially this year, that it's really the schools, as the test scores whatever about the test scores, but it's like the averages go up because only the ones that are getting above average are submitting the scores, so then it gets totally skewed. But anyways, you know, it's really being able to demonstrate who you are based on the things that you've done, the classes you've taken, the other things that you've done.
I wanted to add, because I of course have had high schoolers and that have gone through. One of the things that I've seen, and I just want to kind of throw this out here because it's something that I've noticed over years, and I would love discussion or some exploration around it, is when you have children at the high school, you see all of the amazing programs and it sort of opens up your world. For elementary and middle school, there's not really that perspective yet. And so I feel like when the question of academic rigor comes up, it's oftentimes that the high school is challenged, but then parents that are at the high school are like, and I know that there are things still being improved and assessed and worked on, but the overall consensus seems to be, oh, here I am, oh wow, here's how it really is. And I wonder what we might be able to do as a group to help bridge the gap of information, to help elementary school understand and help middle school understand what the high school has to offer. Because it seems like there's this fear of there's not academic rigor. And then once you get there, it's like, oh, now I understand and I see it. So I just would like to explore that a little bit more. It feels like there's a disconnect there with some of the messaging happening and some of the fears in the community versus reality when you actually get to the high school.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, because I think that like,
Yeah, and Debbie, oh, before I add on to your question, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm trying to balance seeing who's speaking in the room. I wanted to just add on to that question and share that a lot of elementary and middle school parents are feeling the decision of the McCleary decision in 2018, where we, feel the impact of what happened in the last 6 years with our kids in a way that the high school students may have already had that foundation, that they had more access in a way that our kids that are younger don't, because of the way the funding has changed in the last 6 years. And so that is something that I've definitely seen in conversations, and I wanted to ensure that that's highlighted in your response.
I don't think, I mean, being on the board kind of throughout that time and having a kid in the district, for a long time before that, I think our programs have only increased. I don't think McCleary has had an impact on pulling back from any of our offerings. I think that the district has done an amazing job at being able to work within our budget. Obviously COVID threw a little wrench in that, but coming out strong. I think the biggest impact, I don't know if this can be controversial, it might be, but just blame me, don't blame anyone else. That, it had to do with basically making sure that our staff received living wages. And we were far below living wages. But in terms of student opportunities, I haven't noticed that.
And I will kind of disagree, because I had a elementary kid at that time, and for example, the second language, that is something that I went away, and music shifted during her time there, and it was a great one, but it did shift a little bit, and arts was one that was arts and because we had had parent volunteers
we've always
run the program, but I think it did change from my perspective, the second language. So I do see that. I will say that the reality is that that's the budget that we have and that's the program. But I think maybe for the parents, it will be more of communications on. I think that how we grade in middle school. Sorry, grading for grading. Yes. It is fantastic, but I think it's also misunderstood by the parents, because we grew up in a different system, and there's not the feedback, it doesn't cross between teachers and parents, and there's a lot of anxiety on understanding what the level and our rigor is in middle school. So I think that sometimes we feel that you have a 3, but you don't know in which areas, or for example, in the case of my kid, I know where her weaknesses are, but I don't see any feedback, and I think that that's pretty much the same anxiety from the parents, and I think that it's not that we don't have the rigor, it's the how it's communicated maybe, where we need to improve, which is very operational, not.
I'd like to mention a couple programs. One is actually a Robin's program, the We Are Islanders, where they've been bringing the band into elementary schools, the drill team into elementary schools, where those kids can see some of the opportunities that are available to them and get excited about that. And then I also heard from a bunch of 8th grade parents how good the Islander night was at the high school, visiting the high school. And for even parents who had current high schoolers, were like, oh, this is actually really good. I thought I knew everything about the high school, but turns out I learned a lot about the high school at Islander night. So potentially an open house for younger families to visit the high school to see some of the things. More sort of a We Are Islanders event at the high school might be good, but just to kind of get people in to see some of the things that are going on would probably be helpful for bridging that information gap.
And if I could suggest something really basic, but at Island Park, there's like a buddy system where an upperclassman will, come and work with the younger students, and it can just be like a 2-year age gap or more, and everybody's enriched by that. So I don't know if that's something that can be done, between middle school and elementary, high school and elementary, and high school to middle school. But just in a similar vein, I have an incoming freshman, and he's really into robotics, so I'm doing everything I can to sign on to that, but also I want to build a bridge to elementary school. So just through, I guess, these enrichment programs, parents who have the willingness and the time to kind of bring those to the elementary school, I think that will be one path, but of course anything that can be supported at the district level, perhaps with like a buddy program or something like that, would be possibly another way to do that.
Yeah, I think, sorry, go ahead.
That's great. I was just going to say, because I had one thought, which is actually going back to this, going back to sort of Julian's question about sort of life skills, I would say it would be helpful. I think this district has this information in terms of hearing back from students about sort of their period, how they feel during college and after, because I think it's not just about getting into the school, but then actually being at the school that's right for you, instead of just like the highest ranked school you get into, the one that's a good fit. And so I think sharing some of that data in terms of student satisfaction, maybe 3 years out and 10 years out or something, would be really helpful for parents to feel like a sense of like reassurance about sort of how students did. And then my second thought was like, I just got the invitation, the band program has like the elementary students up to IMS, right? To sort of be, for them to think about sort of this, what the band program looks out a couple years out. And I'm thinking about like, I am sure that our math programs, our English programs are K through 12, like they're thought through as K through 12 programs, but I feel like the music programs are really great about connecting elementary and middle school parents with what's coming along next and giving them a sense of sort of this is the long arc of this education. And I feel like that would be great, like for a high school math teacher to come to a curriculum night at the elementary school and say, this is the long arc of where we're headed, because I think that would give a lot of reassurance to younger parents about why the district has the programs it has and where they envision them leading and the different pathways that are available as students go through the system.
I think we've seen in the last couple of years a lot of these things happening and really focusing on community and the fact that we're one community. Robotics is expanded to the middle school, the esports is expanded to the middle school. I know there's several other things that are getting really, that are happening, and then they'll make their way down. Some of them aren't really age appropriate yet, but certainly the 6th through 12 track is really there's, it's very, it's staff dependent, and when, and the 5th grade honors choir, and I mean, you guys probably have a better idea than I do, but I think, yeah. So, I mean, I think a lot, I think you guys are, I think you're right on. I mean, I think this is what people are looking for. And I would love, just also for the tone to be, trust in the fact that people are here and they want to be here. And what I say, and I get in trouble for this too, I get in trouble for a lot of things, but it's like, you moved here for the schools have been great. I think they continue to be great, and we are going to work really hard to make them even better. trust in the system that's here. And, nothing is perfect and nothing is ideal for every student, but, work within to improve rather than listening to non-facts as opinions that I think it's just not productive. And I'm not suggesting any of you, but I think, Ian and the communications and the social media and highlighting different programs and accomplishments that our students have, that our staff has, I think all that has helped. I think working with these different programs to be able to offer opportunities and show the kids, we do All Island Band Night so that our 5th graders can see what they can do when they're, and we've done it for, Robin and I were in band together. And we did All Island Band Night then. And so, we do so much of it. And I would just say, I know it's a societal thing, the lack of trust, but, just that the message is our kids are successful, they're finding their passions, and that's what we're gonna keep doing. And that doesn't mean instead of academic rigor, that means in addition to academic rigor. When they're interested in something, they're gonna wanna learn more.
But I think the transparency communication piece is I think that's where the trust gets really sort of built up. And so I think places like curriculum nights where you have a captive audience where all the parents are showing up, because not all parents are on Instagram or following history, and I think, and also you see these high achievers and you're like, but that's not my kid. My kid's just like a regular kid, so.
Where do they go?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go to Kate and then Sarah, and then we'll check in on time. Kate?
Thanks. Thank you. And I apologize if this is repeated. I have a kid at home with the stomach flu, so I had to step out for a couple of minutes. So if I'm repeating something, I apologize. I was just hearing so much about academic rigor, and I have a 7th grade boy and a 4th grade boy, and it's intimidating to hear the rigor part because I have one boy with an IEP and the academic path could be really hard moving ahead. So automatically I'm like, is this the right district for him? The services he's receiving are amazing, but I have no idea what that transition looks like through middle school and high school, and how to instill in him that even though this is amazing high achieving kids here, that he belongs to be here, which is why I think that We Are Islanders is going to be really huge. But I think that reaching down towards those even just the upper grades in elementary school to the parents with kids with plans would be huge, so that they know, okay, my child has a place here and this is how I'm going to support my child here. I think is really important, because I know who to reach out to because of my position in the school, but I would imagine most people don't.
Sarah.
Thank you, Kate. Your mind took me completely elsewhere, but I just wanted to comment or maybe clarify that the question I was asking that I'm noticing what elementary is sitting with, and Julian, you talked about it, and Kirsten, you talked about it, is that when I speak to elementary parents, they feel that they have to supplement because there's not the support in the school, in that we can't hire more paras, for example. Our Islanders, as far as I know, is PTA driven, for example, and a lot of parents that I'm sitting with at the elementary level are, well, if we want to do this, then we have to show up in the school more and volunteer more and provide support, or do it ourselves. And so I think that's what I meant in asking that question. I think that's why I'm curious to know from a school board, because when they get into high school, I'm a first-time elementary parent, so I don't know if the current high school parents showed up or were asked to show up in the same way in order to provide the kind of individualized support. And that could be academic, it could be the arts. I'm sitting with the burden that parents are feeling in trying to provide individualized needs of all their kids, be it, at any level that their kids are at, across many different programs and some of them have been cut. And that might not have been the case 6 years ago.
So Sarah, some of that question then, it sounds to me, I think it's a great one, and that is, the formula has worked for a long time for our students. And is what's in place right now going to continue to perpetuate that, such that kids do have all of these opportunities in the high school? Are things different than they were, as you just said, 6 years ago, 10 years ago? And, you know, because I think everyone wants the long arc and what's it gonna look like at the end? Because at the end is walking across that stage, and then are they successful? Do they go to that school and not only get into it, but thrive there, and on, so.
Yeah, but I think it's sort of at a high level, one of the things that we've heard from the board, and a big shift, is we adopted the iReady curriculum, particularly the elementary and the middle school, and that's a huge transition. A lot of other districts made the same decision because some of the capabilities, you know, the idea that you can have a more personalized learning experience. At the same time, we've heard feedback that it's not all good news, that sometimes there's a sense that some of the content is a little bit filler, that it isn't as weighty or substantive as perhaps a more traditional curriculum. So I certainly hear the concerns. I think when it comes to the implementation of increasingly electronic curriculum, there's some work for the board, along with the other boards, I mean, sort of as we embark on this pathway, to make sure that it's the correct pathway. And that we create standards to sort of measure that, and to know if it's working as well as it's, you know, the promise.
So just checking in, having sat at this table for over time, sometimes it's felt like we've just tried to get through all of our agenda items and then it's not robust enough. But like tonight, we've been on a topic for a half hour. Do you want to stay on this topic and keep going, or shift to another one? Just check in with all of you.
I feel like it might be helpful to shift.
Okay.
I don't know how everyone else feels, but
Great.
yeah, I think it's a good time to shift.
Are you gonna go next, Debbie, or do you want to go to one of the board ones? Do we want to go into, we have long-range facility planning, we have kind of funding, where Sarah was kind of taking us there.
Why don't we go to funding? 'Cause I think
funding.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, because that kind of came up in the last topic, and that'd be helpful for this topic.
I think the fundamental question on this one is, you know, what are the board's priorities as we continue in this era of shrinking rather than expanding budgets? That was kind of the essential question.
I mean, I could talk about what we are doing to kind of try and increase funding.
We have a couple questions from our advocacy person, which might be helpful to inform this discussion. So just let me read these questions and then you can kind of answer them in the best way you can. What adjustments has our district made in response to declining enrollment, state underfunding to better use our resources? Second question is, why do we have 9 full-time instructional coach positions in our district when we have a largely veteran teaching staff? Could these roles be repurposed to provide more direct supports to students, especially in areas that we know the state isn't adequately funding, specifically special education? A third question, given that staff salaries are the largest budget driver of our district budget, and these are determined by bargaining with the MIEA, how is the MIEA collaborating with the district to find a sustainable path forward? Specifically, we know that when layoffs occur, they're on the basis of last in, first out, i.e. seniority, which means that more new teachers at lower salaries need to be laid off to close the financial gap. There's a specific article that she links to, but is the MIEA open to using other criteria when layoffs need to occur, which would both benefit student learning and our budget?
Can I take a stab at that? So I think in terms of...
Can we pause just one second? I'm sorry, technical issue. There's a message to let Nancy Weil into the meeting.
You got it?
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so I think what we're encountering with demographic change, it's cyclical, it's happened before, but it's been a long time since there's been a time of sustained declining enrollment. It's the flip side of our earlier conversation that this is peak insanity college admissions, right? That it is the peak and that enrollment is going down. And as a result, as the email suggested, revenue and expenditure is largely tied to students and staffing. And any industry, it's tough when you need to make adjustments to reflect a decrease in services based upon the number of students, but a decrease doesn't mean a decrease in the offerings. It's just scaling at the right level. It's an emergent, sort of dynamic that we're just seeing. I think the board took the initial step last year in doing 2 demographic studies, which was more unusual, and it was because of the anomaly of seeing a large shock in enrollment from the pandemic, but then trying to disentangle what is sort of the long-range outlook look like because of demographic change. I think it's something for the board to continue to work on in terms of identifying when courses and curriculum, like there's going to be an impact, and when it's an employment impact and not necessarily a curriculum impact. I think it's still very early days. I mean, we're going to see if demographers are right, which they usually are. It's one of the few social sciences that does have quite a degree of predictability. I think we'll have to make adjustments, and I think there also needs to be regional solutions. I don't think it's our district in isolation coming up with what may, in sort of a game theory sense, perhaps be the best, not being mindful of how it impacts other districts. And I'm hopeful that elected leaders, ourselves included, will sort of coalesce and realize that it's a dynamic affecting the region, the state, the nation, and sort of come up with some concrete solutions to it.
To add on to all of that, I think we're coming out of this pretty strong. There's districts that in our region that are like deep in the throes of it, and having met with someone from one of the president of the North Shore School Board, they made drastic cuts this year. They're in the thick of it. So we're there doing I don't remember the number she told me, but it's astronomical. I mean, they cut their 5th grade music program. Those are cuts. And that's just one example, and they've made several of the ones like that. So, we felt it early and first, but we're coming out. We're gonna end the school year with back up to 5% fund balance. I think, we're building it slow and steady and not, cutting things and working on natural attrition. And I know they don't like this term, but right-sizing our schools, making sure that the staff-student alignment is good. And we also, we have to, lots of scenarios with that. I think the fundamental problem is funding. When McCleary went into effect, the state budget had 51%.
Got as high as 52%.
Got it, yeah, as 52, and that was what, 2017, 2018, of the state budget, which we know we have the most regressive state budget in the country, the way that we assess taxes. So, there's a lot of things that the legislature could do that we can't do, but we certainly can advocate for these changes. They haven't, it was as high as 52% not very many years ago with the McCleary fix, and we're down to 43% of the state, 43% of the state budget goes to education. They are failing us. They're failing our kids, and we need to have our votes say that. And in addition, what I think is actually even more, just as important is the prototypical school model. The prototypical school model was developed 20 years ago.
First one was in the 70s. The last major revision was 2008.
See, I keep them around for a reason. It's something that's supposed to have been modified. It's supposed to be fluid. It's not supposed to be this stagnant prototypical school model. So until the legislature starts funding us in the way that we know our students deserve, we're not going to be able to provide the para support that we know our students need. I mean, there was an increase in nursing and social work, but that didn't impact us because we were already finding ways to do it. So I'm not trying to be snarky. I'm just saying, we have to use our votes and our mouths to get the legislature to make education a priority. Every time that they do some sort of fix or change, they're like, okay, we're done. It's like, no, it's not. And we have to find a way for our legislators to understand that it's an ongoing issue. You know, we've got a governor's race who sets the budget, get in there, meet the candidates, advocate for the interests. But, you know, we have to overhaul the prototypical school model where, you know, with the safeguards in place so that it doesn't always, you know, I mean, I believed in the McCleary fix. I thought our teachers deserve a living wage, but you know, I mean, I'll let Fred talk about instructional coaches. With regards to MIA, that's unions. You got to ask them those questions. I would say it's probably not you would have to ask the union that question. I'm on both sides of unions, so I get it. But and then the instructional coaches, I mean, it's best practice. And I'll let Fred.
Let me just finish off on MIEA. You know, we're negotiating right now, and so I want to be careful about answering the topic in terms of what our interests are or their interests, but it would be a question for them if that is an interest of theirs. But I can speak to the partnership. You know, I think Sally and I have worked really hard over the last year and a half, going on 2 years, to really try to find common ground. We meet regularly, although it's been a little tricky recently just because of timing. An example of the partnership working, they were the only represented group in the state who didn't take the full increase next year of what the IPD was. So IPD was at 3.7%. When we spread that across everyone because of the prototypical model, it was 2.5%. And so, you know, they were the only ones in the state who didn't, you know, who only received that. I don't know where that will go this year, but I believe that's a tip of the cap to the partnership of understanding where we were financially and where we need to go. Now, IPD does not have to be a pass-through. There's nothing in state law that says it has to be a pass-through. It typically becomes that for districts, but of course the state only funds the positions that they have. So before I go to coaches.
Yeah, I would just say, like, I'll let you finish up with coaches, and then I was going to talk about McCleary just a little bit.
No, perfect. Okay. No, that's perfect.
So I mean, I see things a little bit differently than Deborah on this. So McCleary centralized funding a lot. We now have, as a state, the third most percentage of our funding comes from the state. That was a huge shift. The other states are much more similar across the states. Vermont has higher in terms of centralized funding for understandable reasons, and I think it's Alaska or Arkansas that has the most centralized. So that's, I think, unusual, particularly given the significant cost of living differences across the state. One of the things that we did as a board when regionalization came up for the first time in 2022, because it was sort of built into the McCleary fix and sort of centralizing funding and also creating a ceiling on how much we can ask from voters, was a reassessment. And the proposal that came out of Reichdahl and OSPI would have shifted more funding away from our district in King County and towards outlying areas. We were very active about that, and I think contributed to that not going anywhere. We now see that a year later, at the General Conference for Washington State School Directors Association, taking positions that are continuing, I think, to put pressure on shifting resources to more outlying areas. So I guess, to me, I'm not sure the answer is that we should look to the state if we don't think we're being treated fairly by the state. So to me, it's not just that we should increase prototypical school model and increase taxes, give more to Olympia, and have more go out to other areas. So I think it's a little bit more nuanced, complicated. I do think with regionalization, it's going to continue to be a hot topic. That's where the rubber meets the road in a centralized funding model.
I don't think I said I agree with the McCleary fix.
Well, I mean,
at all.
Okay, but in terms of looking for the state versus sort
okay,
of
I never. But Dan, please,
okay.
That's part of the problem. Don't ever misquote me like that. I said that I was happy that our teachers were able to get living wages. That's what I said.
Okay, we agree on living wage. I mean, I didn't mean to. I just think more centralized funding has not worked out well for Mercer Island. And don't think that it should necessarily continue to embark upon that path and look into the state versus increased autonomy for local school districts to pay a living wage would be the opposite approach.
But I will say that I appreciate the partnership that us as a school district board has with the PTA, because the advocacy that you do at state level to getting first to lobby and make sure that the voice is being heard, but also sharing with the community that this is something that matters, and if the community does not raise the voice of this, the way that things are happening and distributed, then nothing is being changed because legislators do not hear from the community. So I appreciate the job that you do a lot. I have learned a lot from the PTA advocacy, and that has helped me learn a lot more to this. But I think it has to continue this partnership together of what our goals are, which is the children. And if it is tough, it's not easy.
Well, and to that end, I can share from the PTA side, and you may be aware of this, but I believe almost every local unit and at the council unit, we all passed resolutions allowing advocacy to use our units to get ahead of this coming legislative assembly and to start building support for the issues that will impact Mercer Island with regionalization and some of the other ones. But the goal was to try to, over the summer, organize with Mercer Island and others in the area. But it's definitely something that is top of mind for PTA as well.
Serene?
Oh, thank you. I just had a quick question about the specific last in, first out policy. Is that a deal breaker for MIEA? Like, is that just always going to be the way?
I don't know if, that would be a question for them. I would say from a state perspective, and even having been in 3 other states, or 2 other states, this is my 3rd, that is not atypical of what you see in contracts across the 3 states I've worked in and the 3 districts I've been in.
And as a former union member, not MIA, but my own, be careful what you wish for. I'm not saying, like, I have the same concerns. There's ways of making sure that you have the best staff on hand, but doing it at merit-based and other things brings on issues of its own in terms, antagonized workforce. I mean, it brings in problems of its own. So it's not the be all. I'm not suggesting that anyone says this, but be very careful what you wish for. It is, having a concrete, understandable way to do these things is often more of a benefit than it's given credit for, because it keeps, any layoffs, it has morale issues. Can you imagine putting merit-based on that? And I went through that once in a former job, and it is not, it destroys communities.
Along the line of coaching, we've had 3 different kinds of types of coaches. And so it all began originally as TOSAs, teachers on special assignment. We then morphed into coaches. We've had coaches in special services. We've had coaches for instructional technology, and then we've had coaches that are building-based coaches. We've reduced some of the FTE for the building-based coaches. We're down to 7.5 positions in there. We've maintained a pretty flat over time instructional coaching model for our technology, and that's with 5 positions. So we have 1 at the high school, 1 at the middle school, and then 1 who splits between the 2. And then we have the 2 at the elementary. And actually, we've dissolved our coaching model for special services because we realized that instead of needing coaches, we needed behavior supports, BCBAs, we've needed other types of support. The middle school this year tried a model where they diminished some of their coaching and they did some teaching in classrooms, And, you know, I think they realized some of the impact they had to their professional development and professional learning. I was just up at the high school today talking to Principal Wold. We were talking about where he wants to go next year with some of his professional development and thinking about how do we align professional development so that it's consistent all the way through from grade to grade to grade within departments. So much of that work, you need someone who's shepherding that process. I also think it's important to realize that, you know, when I walk into Island Park today and I see Joby McGowan, their instructional coach, he's with a student who's on a behavior, who has a behavior plan. He's the one monitoring that plan. So in an ideal world, coaches are only working with adults. In the practical world, they're working with kids too. So I appreciate the question, which is, wouldn't it be better if they're there to provide intervention? Many of them are. Some of them are running literacy groups. So it's not as pure as one might think on that, but we will always, just like we do with our classroom teachers and others, we've got to match enrollment with our staffing. And we won't be able to maintain the same coaching staffing, you know, that's going to have to dwindle as well.
Can you talk about what Chris Cochran is doing? And I'm thinking specifically with Rigor.
Yeah, so Chris Cochran-Ray is we've called her our inclusionary practices coach. And so she kind of sits more on the special services on the broad spectrum, but she's been working in the elementary, really designing and developing instructional materials for teachers to be able to use, particularly to enrich. She's retiring, which is a sad loss for our district from a great educator. However, I think we're going to be able to now bring in another coach who can even take some of what Chris has done, continue to actualize that in our classrooms, at least for another year or so with that position too.
So when we hear the question of, you know, how can a teacher in one class teach, you know, from here to here and providing the support and the enrichment and the extension, it's with instructional coaches and providing that support and making sure that they have the development that they need in order to be able to provide for our kids.
And it will ebb and flow. I mean, as we shrink, we'll have to shrink, you know, that along with others, just like we've shrunk the number of administrators in our district. And, you know, that's to try to drive as much back to the classrooms as possible. Was there another question though in there, Julian? Did we catch them all?
I think that you largely caught them all,
okay.
Yes.
Do we have an easy one?
There are no easy ones.
I ask that every day.
There are no easy ones.
Maybe the technology one, or is
Great.
is that
Yeah.
Vivian has her hand?
Oh, sorry, Vivian.
Yeah, I have a questions for the school board. You know, given the popular, you know, feedback we got from the parents for, you know, the PTA lead, the belonging campaign, we are, you know, see those needs from the community for, you know, the continuing belonging events. However, we do see, you know, the kind of burden and the workload on the parents that volunteer and to lead those events. So my question for the board is, has the board ever discussed or consider to work with the school district to hire a, you know, kind of inclusion or diversified staff to kind of be like the main contact and the lead to drive some of those events? I understand the budget constraint and other priorities in the school district list, but just want to see, you know, is that something even considered and discussed among the school board members?
We haven't had any, I don't think we've had any formal discussion. We certainly discuss it kind of when we're meeting and two-on-ones and things like that. You know, it's choices. It's really just choices. And I so understand, along with everyone sitting at this table, the volunteer fatigue. Man, am I feeling it right now. And I'm sure everyone here is feeling it as well. It's the same parents that step up and do everything. And it's exhausting. But, you know, if we add an employee to do that, then we're taking away an employee to do something else at a time when we're trying to keep our admins slim so that we have the most staff available to work with students. So, you know, it is always, I know it's always on Fred's mind in terms of how he can make sure that DEI is within the system rather than kind of separate. And I know that, you know, he talks about how, you know, everyone's responsible for it. And I know, you know, the counter argument is when everyone's responsible for it, nobody's responsible for it. It is always something that's on the minds. And I mean, it just comes down to choices, but it certainly is a regular topic.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback on what Vivian's saying, like I think if you look at surrounding districts, you know, most of them have found the value in hiring a DEI person as part of their administration. And I think the thinking is that feeling included in your school community is fundamental in being ready to learn. And so in terms of closing some of those learning gaps, like having someone whose paid job it is to make sure that every kid is showing up and is able to be ready to learn is critical. And so I think, you know, as many volunteers as many of us volunteer as many hours as we can. We actually we can't be systemic in the way that a district employee can be to make sure that no kids are getting left behind. And I think we continue to see learning gaps in the same places that we always have. And so I think there's that question about, we make choices, but it's like, do we, I think we have to think as a district in terms of, you know, our responsibility to every student being ready to learn, and could a DEI person whose job that is facilitate? Because I feel like, I mean, we're lucky we have a superintendent who's like actually really great at this stuff, but I feel like you also have other things to do, like on your docket. So I guess that's my thought, is just that like it's not like a side job, it's actually fundamental so that every kid has the same opportunity.
Totally agree with you. And you know, one thing that would be, Fred probably already knows the answer of how, like, we cannot compare ourselves to Bellevue and like Washington when, you know, they've got 50 people in the district office. And so to hire, you know, someone to do, and I totally agree with you. I mean, I would make that a priority if it was up to me, but it's not up to me, but it's also, you know, it's choices. To look at some of the districts that are our size and have, like, if they have positions like that, because a pushback we get, which we actually already heard in here, is there's too much of a focus on admin. But I personally agree with you. So, I mean, it's always going to be the forefront. I don't know the answer. I mean, get the state legislature to put it in the prototypical school model.
Or I think, I mean, one of the things the district, you know, could look into that, again, like, has not historically been done, but is more pooling of resources with adjacent districts. Whether that is for, you know, a fractional FTE, and that it can be true like both at the admin level as well as at the teaching level. The headwind is just historically hasn't been done. As far as I can tell, no real reason. I mean, it's done at the college level in consortiums, you know, much more frequently, but it isn't something that's been done. But I think it's something that could be explored to address, you know, some of these issues.
Sarah?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Deborah, I do appreciate the point you're talking about with costs, but I sat in on several meetings with Fred, not this past year, the year prior, and the amount of hours that Fred was spending on this and speaking to an alternative than somebody else would be spending on it. And I think, Fred, you're witnessed the amount of hours of you having to respond to parents that don't feel a sense of belonging. And so if we're looking at it from a monetary cost, I want to name it that your time being spent on addressing parents' concerns is taking away from your time managing other things for the school district because we don't have somebody in the district managing.
It's a great point.
I will say that I think that this is a great thing that we can partner in the sense that it doesn't have to be a DI position. It can be something that we decide what it would look like. So on your point is what is what you're looking for, and from us we can do a research on the nearby district and see what the district, which position they have, and what needs are they serving, and is it working or not, and it can be we can see what can be done in that sense and
Yeah, because I think
explore that. Because I do agree, the amount of time it is impressive that managing.
And I think student retention is so important right now that making sure that families stay. You know what I mean? Like feel like they belong in the community is really important just in terms of the budget issues we're talking about. So I think having somebody who's feeling all of these parent concerns, because there's a lot of them in the community, would be helpful in terms of, But yeah, but it could be,
model.
Right, it could be, maybe, because maybe it's not a DEI position, maybe it's something that's about, I don't know. But I would love for the board to think about that.
I don't know, like, I'm saying that this, if we know what the needs or what you are looking for, and we can see different models, it can be within our own staff that we, I don't know, it can be, we can assess and see what can be created.
Well, this is a perfect example of board versus operations, policy versus operations. It is in our policy that DEI is a fundamental, and we allow we charge our superintendent with setting up the structure that he believes is the most effective. So, you know, and there's constant tweaking to it. I'm happy to have a discussion with the board in terms of whether or not we think that it's a strong enough fundamental. I mean, I think it's, it's one of 5 that we all say are equally important. But the policy is clear, and then it's just, it's an issue of staffing that we really try not to dictate. I mean, if we're not happy with what our employee is doing, then that's another discussion we have, but I'm not saying.
Something, when you talk about what the role is and how it's defined, just to kind of throw something out there from the high school perspective, I know that they have, and every child has a person that they can connect with and a staff member. And if you're not showing up, there's a safety net in place where you are immediately reached out to. And I don't know if that is happening at the middle school or elementary school, but when you talk about like the getting to school so that you can learn, I don't know if or how that could be expanded, but it's a creative thing that could be expanded to some of the other levels. And I don't know which position is or how it fits in, but it's something that may at least be a step.
Julie Newcomer actually has talked to us about what she does at Northwood, and they have, of the elementary schools, the highest attendance issue. And so they've employed some strategies like that, where she's the one calling and saying, how are you? And so, it's a priority. I don't know what each school does individually, but she has talked about that, and that they saw a remarkable increase in attendance as a result of that.
So we've kind of come to the end. It goes quickly, the hour, but it's not my meeting, so this is your meeting. If you want to keep going or wrap it up, it's up to you all.
We did have a question on technology that, it would be helpful to hear from the board on just for a few minutes. You don't have to go long.
Sure, yes, we just wanted to, something that's been a topic of conversation among parents within the district is the relationship of cell phones and technology within the schools on several different levels. I know at elementary school, there's the policy of no cell phones, but then you have the watches. And then there's the middle school policy and the high school policy. And they're all a little bit different. And we know there's lots of feelings and thoughts around that. But we thought it would be helpful to have as a discussion with us, just because it is sort of a very prevalent.
I think that, we've talked about this some, and whether or not, honestly, whether or not the board has the bandwidth and whether or not it's even the appropriate place to have the conversation. What I can tell you, the things that we've learned is while the elementary schools, it's not as much an issue. It is a newer issue with the watches, but they're dealing with it. And then the high school has said that they don't believe, that they don't have to deal with it on a regular basis at all. Like, it's a very low priority and a very low incident of I know the students feel like sometimes there's different policies with, among different classrooms, but that's not high on their priority list. It seems like the middle school is the sticky spot, and personally, I hate to pass the buck, but I think there's a lot better places for the board and our administration to be spending their time, that if parents want a model policy of some sort, that, someone needs to take that on and do that work. I think, I read it, I was telling Fred, there was an article in the Times yesterday about a principal in
Connecticut.
Thank you, and who just said no more phones. And, it was met with a lot of resistance, and then said that people were having great, feedback after kids got used to it and all that. So, it's a huge lift. It's a huge area of controversy, because to me, it's much more a parenting thing and then teaching kids limits rather than a school thing. I know, Dan, you're gonna disagree. Let me finish, please. We're working on facility stuff, we're working on bond stuff, trying to get bonds to pass, we're working on significant legislative advocacy. I'm not interested in taking it on. Not that I don't think it's important, but I don't know. To me, I don't know. It's, if someone wants to bring us something after having vetted it with the community, I think I certainly, we haven't, there has not been a majority of the board that has said that they've got an interest in taking this on right now.
And also there are cell phone policies, like at
And
the
there are
school
cell
level,
phone policies.
there are already policies. I mean, whether they need to be reiterated, whether they need to be enforced more across the board, in the classroom level, that's a discussion to have at the school level. But again, I think that because the schools have such different audiences of, little ones to people who are going to college next year, again, thinking of the middle school, maybe the principals need to look at their policy, maybe they need to reiterate it, maybe parents need to weigh in with them to sort of see.
Right.
But,
when people say policy, they're talking that's code word for we want to ban cell phones.
Right.
And, sorry, I interrupted you.
So where I agree and disagree in part is, where I definitely agree is I actually think that where it should come from in terms of a proposal, because I think there's a lot of different ones, is I think probably from like the PTA, because I think it's from parents that have actually the most insight into what we would like to see as a community. I don't think I don't actually see this predominantly. It needs to be enforced by educators and be feasible in that regard. I think the board needs to then pass a policy that is enforced by the administrative level, but in terms of what that looks like, I think the best resource is what parents collectively think that it should look like. And so without, passing the buck, but I do think that we're not in the best position to sort of determine what the contours of a policy should be, but I do think it's something that we should certainly consider, and I think we're sort of behind the ball in not having a policy, or not having as robust of a policy. Not as robust of a...
People that say there isn't a policy just don't agree with the one.
Not as robust of a comprehensive policy, perhaps, as other districts, but at least in my view, I would look to parents to sort of put a proposal on the table for us to
I don't think
explore.
anyone around here bans cell phones.
also I think that currently there's someone that's doing a book tour that is anti-cell phone, and so he's doing a lot of press right now. And so people are hearing it again and again and again. You can agree or disagree with where he's getting his conclusions from. Maybe students are depressed because they're doing shooter drills from the time they're in pre-K, who knows? He's not weighing that, he's weighing they're depressed because they have cell phones in their hands. But I suspect if we tried to take cell phones away from our students, we'd hear from just as many parents who are like, but wait, I want to be able to contact my child.
Right.
So it's a parenting decision in the end. And
Well, and
I
I
think
would
it might be in
say
the ether now, and
the
maybe...
parent community is
Yeah.
not united on it. It's
No,
a very,
they're
I agree coming from the parents, but I wouldn't say that there's even a consensus among parents of what they would even want that to
And I
look
think
like.
it's the same issue with sort of the board. I think there's more of a discussion to be had, and maybe there'll be an emergent sort of but yeah, other than it's certainly on our radar, I think as a board, but yeah, a complex issue.
I think it would be helpful, because I feel like where there's not a policy actually is on cell phone use in the classroom. I think that's teacher to teacher, and I think from an equity lens, I think that's an issue, because I think, starting in middle school, I mean, I would hear stories of a teacher saying, okay, everyone, like, the next task, pull out your phone and everyone find something, or do some research on your phone. And some kids didn't have a phone, or some kids didn't have a phone with those capabilities. And I think, or there's some kids had an older phone and some kids had a newer phone, and all that kind of stuff around economic equity comes up. And I feel like there could be a policy which is to tell teachers, use the technology that the district already has given you, right? Everyone has an iPad.
That's my question, is why are they not told to pull out their iPad?
Well, no, they're not, or most kids are said, after the quiz is done, you can play on your phone, or after you can listen to music on your phone. And I feel like, I actually think that the board could have a policy about personal technology use in the classroom that would just make it clear, because there's not really, right now it's teacher to teacher in terms of in-classroom use, and I think there is an equity issue there that would be helpful to have addressed.
I mean, we used to pull out a book or do a crossword puzzle and finish stuff.
Whatever happens to make
Well, can I just jump in really quick? So for me, it was an eye-opening. We had the student advocacy the group before, and this was a question for them, and it was very interesting how we changed it. In elementary, they hated the ones that had cell phones pretty much because they had spam calls and it will interrupt, so it's just pretty much a policy of with your phone. High school, they actually appreciate having a phone, and they were all in favor that because they use it as a tool, an extra tool for different things, and there was not a problem for them. It was middle school who had an issue, and it was pretty much saying like there's no standard across the teachers on how they utilize, who utilizes and it was very confusing for students. And I think that pretty much, and I don't know if it's a board kind of thing right now, or it will be more on the pretty much middle school to decide how they're gonna standardize this to make it sure for students and see how it goes, and then if it works or not, I don't know, move forward based on the opinion of the parents. I also think that the teachers should have a say because they had to be the ones calling on kids to put them phones and go away. And also some students, I have heard from a lot of parents that it is something that will help with the anxiety of their kids. So I think it has to do, you have to talk to the three groups before. But we appreciate, yes, we will hear about this issue.
And we hear about it a lot.
And I would say, as a mom, I would love to have completely banned from the island, but I'm not on the island right now. Yes.
Across the bridge.
In front of the bridge, yes. But
I don't see any other questions from those online. I don't see any other questions here, and so I don't know if you want to.
Thank you all. These are difficult conversations and managed in a really productive and respectful way. So thank you for that, and we'll continue to partner, I know, in the future. And looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 4-0, and it's 7:30. And thank you, Joaquin.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I have an email coming to you. I'm almost done with it. It's coming to you tomorrow.
No, I
was gonna bring you tonight.
Now you get to go home.
I was gonna bring you.
I think she's
And I heard,
It is life changing.
so some of our like.
And if I still miss
I'm gonna dart out. So I'm the chief I call myself the CWO, the chief warrior officer around there. And I'm
Yes. I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure, it's just on radio.
Okay, you know that yours is a feeling, you're like, anyway, yes, thank you for your email. It's been like a little bit of a.
I know, I can see it.
It's like low grading me, and I was just like, basically like I'm not gonna actually get ensnared, like just like we're gonna use it to get ensnared.
I know, I was trying to, I was like, I'm the episode is very familiar.
Okay.
And, so I was presented to Julian's
Okay.
But knowing that if you have stuff.
You're going on the trip.
And Lizzie, I think you talked about. She is the DEI person.
Yeah.
But there's been they have conversations, but feel free to ask.
Okay. Okay, yeah. I just
Like, don't go over, but if there's something that you know, stay with, people in and.
Right.
And it's okay to ask.
Right. I'm just trying to I feel like I could really just get out of control, and I'm really like, how do we keep this, basically in a way that's not gonna, I just think, there's so many other things we could be doing for. Right, and I'm just but I'm not, so I can understand frustration.
So I'll have her, it should be.
It's such a resource. That's a frustration.
That's why
Because you don't want them to then.
I said, so give me some free time.